Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and in today's video, I want to discuss some stuff that's going on right now in the games industry, something that relates directly back to a video that I put out last summer in the middle of 2019, and it's something that I briefly mentioned in a video I put out earlier this week, one of my more recent videos, but what I want to discuss today is what I call the No Man's Sky paradox. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me just briefly summarize the video that I put out last year. I'm not going to make you go back and watch the whole thing. So, in essence, when No Man's Sky first came out, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the story. The game came out commercially. It sold very well. It did very well for the studio that put it out, Hello Games, and the issue is that the game didn't deliver almost in any way, shape, or form what was promised to the public before the game was launched. It was an unmitigated disaster. People were very upset. People felt that Sean Murray and Hello Games lied to them during the marketing process, and it clearly was going to go down as one of the most infamous failures in all of gaming history. And over the years, they kept working on the game, kept putting out more content and putting out big updates to the game. And last year, after the third year of major updates, people were finally mostly forgiving Sean Murray. And in fact, not just forgiving Hello Games and Sean Murray, but praising them. And not just praising them, but just giving them the highest praise possible, as if they had, done the most inexplicable and miraculous thing that had ever happened in the gaming industry. They actually took the time to fix a game. And at the time I said, well, the real issue here is, yes, they fixed the game and they should have some commendation for doing so. I agree with that. But the issue is when you give someone that level of praise and act like, they're the greatest thing that's ever happened in game development. And indeed, Sean Murray was going out and even being like, oh, well, this is how other game developers should handle their situation if they launch a broken game. And he was actually pontificating about what other game developers would do after this situation where they had fallen flat on their face. But my contention was, because Hello Games had no real reputation to fall back on, they didn't have a pedigree of high-profile IPs to fall back on, they had really nothing but No Man's Sky in the public's mind, that if they did not take the ample proceeds that they had made from No Man's Sky, once again, it did very well commercially, if they did not take that money and funnel it back into the game, then even though they made a bunch of money on that one game, they would never be able to show their face seriously in the industry again. They would never be able to go back on stage at E3 and sort of give a presentation where anyone would take seriously, because they would have said, hey, you scammed us all once, that's all we know about you, is one of the biggest fleece jobs in the game's history, and we're not going to buy into your nonsense a second time. So my contention was, yes, they fixed the game, but in my opinion, they had to either fix the game or they were looking at having to close up shop. Now, would they have all retired from Hello Games with plenty of money in their pocket? Of course. The game was made with less than 24 people at the studio. So with all the copies they sold, yes, they all did quite well. I'm sure they all could have found new jobs elsewhere, and they could have shut down the studio. But instead, they did what people consider to be the right thing, and yes, to a degree, it did. But my overall opinion was, while this worked out well for the fans of the game, and while this worked out well for Hello Games, of course, they have pretty much completely salvaged their reputation with most people, and now they can go back on stage and try to peddle their next game, and people will take them seriously because they are viewed as having this massive redemption story and this grand arc, and now everyone loves Hello Games again. But while everything seems to be perfect over on the No Man's Sky side of the coin, on the flip side, you have the rest of the games industry sitting up and taking notice and saying, oh, hey, we can use this one lone example of a studio making a huge turnaround of a game and not fulfilling on the promises that they made. We can use this example and bump that up. We can use that as a shield and a defense and put this out as this grand icon that we can follow and hide behind every time we launch a game that is broken at launch, that has no content at launch, that doesn't fulfill any of what the developers promised before the game launched. And I said that this was going to happen, and we're going to see it more and more often. And now that's exactly what's happening, and I saw it happening again today. And all of the corporate media sites will just jump right on board and report on these current games coming up, and many of them will bring up No Man's Sky. and try to use that as a defense. And many fans of the game will use No Man's Sky as a justification for the problems that their game is having. And they'll say, look, see, Hello Games did it. And this company, Company X that I love, well, they have way more resources than Hello Games, so of course they'll fix this game. Last month we saw BioWare and Casey Hudson put out their little mea culpa letter where they said that they were going to completely rework Anthem and they're going to fix the game and it's going to come out and it's going to be completely changed. They're finally going to put the time into the game. And what happened? The media completely uncritically started hyping up the next update, talking about how they were interested to see what's going to happen. And just remember, No Man's Sky. Remember what happened with No Man's Sky? Well, they fixed that. So, BioWare, of course, BioWare knows they have to fix Anthem, so they're going to obviously put the time and effort into it. Yet, nothing BioWare has done to this point should give anyone any sort of confidence. What about the roadmap they had? Remember, I've been talking about roadmaps a lot lately. Well, BioWare threw the Anthem roadmap completely out the window. They scrapped it. Yet we're supposed to buy into their next set of promises. Why would anyone in their right mind buy into it? Yet the media goes along with it. And guess what? Here on YouTube, quite literally every single video that I saw talking about the Anthem update, where they're supposedly going to change everything in this big announcement, literally every video that I saw mentioned No Man's Sky. Now, why would they mention No Man's Sky? Because of this redemption arc. It has become commonplace to just use that game as a complete whitewashing and a complete defense for everything that's wrong with any game. Well, No Man's Sky, No Man's Sky, No Man's Sky. Like, how many times are you just going to repeat the word? Like I said, every YouTube video I saw mentioned No Man's Sky when talking about the BioWare update. Why? There's no connection at all, aside from the fact that they just want to get people hyped for this redemption arc. Let's see what else happened. A couple videos back, I talked about Pete Hines making some more promises about Fallout 76, promising the next roadmap coming before they even delivered on last year's roadmap. We're going to be 4 months into 2020 before they finish the 2019 roadmap. But they're making promises about that. And what did he do? Well, Pete Hines, in the same interview that I discussed the other night, he said something else. He invoked the name of Elder Scrolls Online, which is, of course, a Bethesda and ZeniMax game. And what happened there? Well, Elder Scrolls Online launched and wasn't very well received at launch, but over time it did improve and people got to the point where they did like the game. And for a while there, you had people saying that it was one of the better MMOs going. Now, I haven't played the game in quite a while, so I don't know what's going on with the game currently. I don't know if people are happy with it or not. But the fact is that while it's not No Man's Sky, it's a very similar situation. In this case, Elder Scrolls Online plays proxy for No Man's Sky because it's a similar arc. Now, of course, an individual publisher like that, when Pete Hines goes out and he's representing Bethesda, if they have a redemption arc story of their own, they're going to try to point to that. Unfortunately, BioWare doesn't really have a storyline where they can point back to and be like, oh, remember that game we turned around? Because, of course, BioWare has a history of actually not fixing their stuff because EA makes them not fix their stuff. Remember Andromeda? Yeah, that game never got addressed properly. So BioWare didn't have that to fall back on. So the storyline for that had to be No Man's Sky. But other games can fill in with that. We saw, now earlier I said that I saw some more news today that ties into this. And coincidentally, it's another game that I discussed previously this week. Ghost Recon Breakpoint from Ubisoft. That's right. I discussed how they had a roadmap as well. Notice a common theme here? All these roadmaps and these unfulfilled promises. This is what I'm talking about. But they of course, were supposed to have their big game-changing update that was supposedly going to revitalize the entire game. And that was supposed to come out in February. And it didn't. They pushed it back. And now they made their announcement today for their new release date coming out next month. And what happened? Well, the media just jumped right in. And again, uncritically hyping this stuff up. And again, the same mindset gets in to all of these articles and all of these videos, and now it has permeated throughout a lot of the gaming population. And I don't know why, because I think that we should know better. But there's this notion that is permeated that when a game launch is broken, that, oh, there's a lot of games that turn around. That's what I kept hearing. well, No Man's Sky did it, and this is very common because they can patch stuff and update stuff, so stuff gets fixed all the time. That's not true. There's very few games that you can point to where these games actually do make major turnarounds. There's a reason why No Man's Sky gets brought up all the time, because it's one of the only major examples that people can point to. Yet there's this notion that has permeated everything that it happens quite often. Yet there's 3 times, 4 times as many. For every success story, there's multiple times more failures that you can point to that never got turned around whatsoever, even from studios that had the money to do so. And that's just a fact. And that's why I call it the No Man's Sky paradox, because No Man's Sky is the one that always seems to get brought up. Like I said, there's various other examples that some people can point to here and there. Final Fantasy XIV gets brought up a lot. Rainbow Six Siege gets brought up a lot, stuff like that. But the point is, there's so few of these examples over the last 10 years for people to point to, yet the notion is that it happens all the time, and I'm trying to point out here that it's simply not true. Now, when I made the video last year, a lot of No Man's Sky fans got on me. They got mad at the thumbnail, mad at the title, and they didn't really understand the premise of what I was talking about. I hope I made it more clear in this video here today. My overall point is this: don't get lured in by everyone trying to use previous games' success as an indicator for why they're also going to be successful down the line. Make them prove it on their own. You can't point to another studio success or another game success or even someone who worked for your own company on another project 4 or 5 years ago. You can't point to that and say, okay, because that happened, we're going to therefore be successful in our endeavor, and we're definitely going to turn this other game around because it happened before. That's not necessarily the case. Like I said, there's just as many failures you can point to, probably a lot more, than successes. Anyway, that's it from me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe. If you want to stay in tune with the channel headed forward, and as always, keep it turned to 11.